Hello. Okay, Dune Part Two, the second half of Frank Herbert's novel Dune. It's a continuation of the same story that started with Dune Part One back in 2021. It's not a sequel, it's a continuation of the same story. And I've just been really looking forward to seeing how Denis Villeneuve completes his vision, his adaptation of a novel that he very clearly loves. Because just in how he's brought this world to life, you could just sense the love. It's an adaptation of what is commonly referred to as being the unfilmable novel. And I've read the novel and I can understand why, because it's massive. And I just feel like, I'm just going to jump straight into it here. I think Denis Villeneuve knocks it out of the park. And just like with Dune Part 1, the adaptation of the first half of that novel, I was left just simply awestruck by how they brought this world to life. It's a visually stunning movie. It's an assault on the senses. Everything feels real. It feels tangible. The world feels like it's lived in. You just haven't got sort of actors on a green screen. It feels like these characters are there on this planet of Arrakis among the dunes. And the way Denis Villeneuve brings this world to life through the stunning sound design, the beautiful cinematography, and the gorgeous score by Hans Zimmer, all of these different elements, these technical elements, just allow you to be immersed into this world. And I was immersed for the 2 hours and 45 minutes. It was a mesmerizing experience, and I feel like this movie, along with Dune Part 1, the two of them together at the end of the day tell one story. Both of these films are technical marvels. What this movie does for me is it takes me back to being a kid again, watching A New Hope for the first time. It's what I would regard as being a milestone in cinema, because it's one of those experiences that just not only successfully transports you into the world and its story in which it's trying to tell, but it just leaves you in awe and wonder of this world that is brought to life. Like, I will always remember watching Star Wars A New Hope for the first time on VHS and just sort of being mesmerized by sort of all sort of like the different technology, the different species, the different planets, how all of that was brought to life. And it was the detail in the aesthetic of the movie and how these environments and technology was all brought to life. And I will always remember sort of fixating on sort of certain parts of the Star Destroyer and wondering, well, what part is that? What part does that do? And that's what they do here. Whenever it comes to the Arconan Spice Harvester, like, you're sort of left wondering and sort of you're left in intrigue, really, in sort of and curiosity, because you could see all these moving parts and it feels real, the way these things are brought to life and sort of how they work within this world. It all feels very much real. It's like something you can touch. It's, for me personally, I would regard Dune Part 1 and Part 2 as being milestones in cinema. Just like the Lord of the Rings trilogy, for example, another good example. It's one of those movies that I would put into that category, that has that status for me. And I have to mention the performances. Like, the performances are all fantastic. You believe in these characters and these journeys that they're on. I personally believe, from what I've seen Timothée Chalamet in, this is, without a doubt, his best performance. You can feel that conflict that's going on within him, and there's this moment within the third act. Again, I'm not going to say too much because it's spoiler free. There's a moment where he sort of just looks at Zendaya's character. There's a moment where he looks at Chani, who's played again beautifully by Zendaya, and it's heartbreaking, but it's such a simple moment, but it's because of Chalamet's performance in that particular moment and how he's bringing this character to life. And you've got Austin Butler, who does a fantastic job at bringing Fade Roofer, the nephew of the Baron, to life. His character just sort of really, his performance really just sort of elevates that kind of tension and that sense of dread that you get throughout this film. And he does a fantastic job at bringing this character, this kind of very unpredictable character, to life And you've got Christopher Walken as well, who I thought was perfect casting as the Emperor. I know not everyone was on board with that casting, but I thought it was perfect. And, Christopher Walken is simply amazing in this movie. And this film, this entire experience, this, the second part of this adaptation, it has this kind of tension that builds right from the very first opening scene, and it builds very gradually, and you've got this sort of sense of dread that also sort of builds alongside this tension, and just how this tension sort of spills out into the third act. It is just simply beautiful in how it's done. And just from that very gorgeous opening scene to the very kind of, that very sort of dread-inducing and tension-filled moment on the Harkonnen homeworld where we're introduced to the Baron's nephew and everything is draped in black and white. It's just simply beautiful. From the direction, the cinematography, the sound design, the gorgeous score by Hans Zimmer. All of these technical aspects help bring this world to life and make it an incredibly immersive experience that also gets under your skin. It makes you feel tense. It gets the blood pumping, and you sort of, as the tension is building, you're feeling it, and it's sucking you more into this story. And I felt like that there was a sense of dread while I was watching the movie. It's quite a tragic story in many ways as well, and Denis Villeneuve just does a fantastic job at really tapping into that element of the story, of the novel. The score by Hans Zimmer is simply gorgeous. Like, for me, it was almost like the pulse of the film. It was the pulse of the story. It's the beating heart that just helps elevate the story and these characters' journeys, and it's almost like it becomes part of the world. It's almost like it's sort of its own kind of living, breathing thing. And it's just constantly there, but it just does so much to elevate and immerse you into this world. It's a gorgeous score by Hans Zimmer. I loved this movie. Do I have any minor gripes? Is there anything that I sort of just didn't quite work for me? Not really. I think because I've read the book, and it is a complex book as far as I'm concerned. For me personally, it was anyway. It was a very sort of complex sort of experience to read. I just feel like Denis Villeneuve had sort of a difficult task, really, in a way, to sort of adapt what is commonly referred to as being the unfilmable novel. And I think the fact that he loves the novel so much, it's why why this film works. But saying that, you do somewhat, well, I did anyway, I personally felt the weight and the strain coming from this weight of telling such a massive story with all these different characters' journeys and subplots and the politics of this universe and the themes in which it's exploring around religion, which, all sort of mirror our own history in a way that's very tragic but just beautifully told. But at the same time, it ends up being very sort of relatable and something that you can really connect to as a result, because it tells a very real story within a very sort of science fiction, fantasy almost setting. And I just felt like you do somewhat feel that weight, but it works. And I felt like it was more prominent in the first part. But I feel like they did a much better job with it with this second part, with the second half of this adaptation. It's there, but I think he pulls it off. As far as I'm concerned, Denis Villeneuve pulls it off. And there's this moment in the third act, I'm not going to say what it is, but you could probably guess actually, but it's a moment that made me want to get out of my chair and just go, fuck yeah. And that's when I knew this film had it had me, it had absorbed me, and I was with these characters, and I was on this journey with these characters. And that's when I knew that Denis Villeneuve had done exactly what he needed to do with this film, with this story. So yeah, I could ramble on about this film for hours, but yet I tried to sort of contain kind of my enthusiasm and sort of the passion that I have for what Denis Villeneuve has done here in adapting this novel. and just sort of, you know, how he was able to really sort of tap into what it was that sort of made me fall in love with film in the first place. Like, take me back to watching A New Hope for the first time. And I think it's going to do, you know, from what I'm reading, it's done the same thing for hundreds of other people, where it's really kind of reminded us sort of, the entire film has that kind of very old-fashioned Hollywood feel about it. You know, those movies that sort of left you in wonder and sort of like left you wondering, how the fuck did they do that? How the fuck did they achieve that? And, you know, that's what Denis Villeneuve does here. And like I said, it's a milestone in cinema for me personally. It's a movie that sort of taps into these sort of deep emotions, and you've got these layers, and sort of when it comes to the characters, it's a massive epic movie that still manages to retain the soul and humanity of what it is they're trying to tell with these characters' journeys and the themes. So yeah, along with sort of the performances, the sound design, the score, the direction, the cinematography, all of these elements help bring a visually stunning, tangible and immersive experience that stays with you long after this film, long after the credits have rolled. Like, this experience has stayed with me since watching it, and it's one that I can't wait to go and see again. I want to see it a couple more times, because there is a lot in this film. Like I said, you could feel that weight, and I feel like the more you see it, the more you're going to get out of it as well. So yeah, again, enough rambling on from me. They are my thoughts on Dune Part 2, and I will be giving Dune Part 2 a 10 out of 10. So yeah, what did you guys think of Dune Part 2? Did you love it? Or did you hate it? Did you agree or disagree with anything I've said? Then please let me know in the comments below, and let's get a discussion going. And if you've made it this far into the video, thank you so much. I really do appreciate it. And if you want to watch future reviews from just some random Welsh geek rambling on, then please hit the subscribe button. It will mean an awful lot to me. I really hope this does well, because I really want to see Denis Villeneuve continue with this story and adapt the second book, which is Dune Messiah. And yeah, I just really want that to happen. So please go out, check this film, because this, you know, this is what cinema is. This is what going to the cinema is all about. My next review will be for Imaginary. And I've also got another video planned in for the week as well. It's a video that I wasn't going to do, but I decided that, you know what, I want to do it. And that is going to be my 10 worst movies of 2023. There are movies that I found to be disappointing, or just movies that were just sort of, for me personally, not great. So yeah, I'll finally be sharing with you guys my top 10 worst movies of 2023. I'll probably release that probably in the middle of next week. So yeah, thanks again for watching. I really do appreciate it. Please go out and see Dune. Support cinema, support film. And yeah, thanks again. I'll be catching you guys soon.